Oh, welcome to another Memphis drawing. As we continue in our 200 drawing prompt book, today we're up to drawing prompt 164. Let's see what it is. Drawing prompt is star constellation, but we rationalized, we didn't want to do that. So we drew the USS Constitution, which was built in 1797. And here's our drawing. If you want to see how we did it, stay tuned. Well, this is a picture of the USS Constellation. It's currently a museum ship. I think I'm going to draw our ship kind of leaning to starboard to the right, and with billowing sails and all that. What I'm doing here is I'm going to draw the sails. Kind of draw the sails in first, because everything will be popping out around the sails. So and there'll be sails behind sails, and the whole shooting match. Constellation was built in 1793, I think. 97. It was authorized by Congress and by the Navy Act of 1793. Back in the day, if you didn't have a Navy, your ships your merchant ships would be attacked by privateers and stuff. So the Navy Act of 1893 authorized the Navy to build 5 ships. I don't remember all of them, but one of them was the Constitution, which is pretty famous. That's old Ironsides, still in commission. And another one was Congress, Chesapeake, President. I think I just named all 5 of them. But about 50 years later, after the Constellation was built, it was in pretty bad repair. Need to be fixed. But luckily, the Navy had been stockpiling oak. White oak is what they what they use for these ships, and live oak. They use live oak for the framework. And so they've been stockpiling all this oak. So the Navy didn't have enough money to build another ship, but they had all that live oak stockpiled, already paid for. So they put the Constellation, I took it to a shipyard and dismantled it, took it apart and scrapped it. And while they were scrapping it, about half a mile away, I don't even know the shipyard, but about a half mile away, they built a new Constellation using their repair money and the oak they had been stockpiling for all these years. This was in, I think, about 1853. So what the Navy did is they just built a new ship, and they called it Constellation. That way they could, and I don't think they told anybody. I mean, anybody from Congress, that's who had to authorize the money. Congress wouldn't do it. So they got a new ship out of the deal. And this is the ship they came up with. Different ship. But because of the way it was done, for all the way into the 20th century, they thought that this ship, the 1853 Constellation, was this ship, the 1797 Constellation. As a matter of fact, that ship, was decommissioned and then picked up by historical societies and for preservation and this and that. And, they advertised it as the original Constellation. And of course it wasn't. And it finally got cleared up, but and now everybody knows that the Constellation, that's a museum ship, is not the original. Then to complicate things even more, there have been several other ships by the name Constellation. There was a battle cruiser, aircraft carrier. I think there was even a battleship planned but never built. At one point they called the 1853, then when they had another constellation, they called this the old constellation and the new constellation. Now, don't be confused when you see these old ships. This isn't the Constellation is not the Constitution. The Constitution, that's the famous one you probably heard of. That's the old Ironsides. And it's still in commission and has a Navy guys assigned to it. It's a different ship. But interestingly, the Constitution, old Ironsides, was a sister ship to the original Constellation, the 1797 version. So they were built at the same time. I read somewhere that the USS Constitution, old Ironsides, was only about, only has 10 to 15% of its original wood. And that kind of reminds us of I guess it's almost a philosophical question. You know, that was like first brought up by, some Greek guy, Socrates or something, who asked the question, if you have a ship and every year you replace some of its wood, at what point, and 15 years later, the ship now has none of its original wood. So is it a new ship? Or is it still the old ship? I watch a real good YouTube channel called the Samson Boat Company, and he's rebuilding. You probably watch it too. He's got a lot of viewers. And he kind of got into that same dilemma. He's rebuilding a boat called the Tally Ho, and he started out rebuilding it. I mean, he started out to repair it, but once he got into it, he discovered that it was beyond repair, really. So I think that was a process. I mean, he started removing planks, and I think his original intention was to replace the the ribs and the planking that needed to be replaced, and just make just to fix it up. Well, after a while, it became apparent that wasn't going to work because everything was rotten. When he discovered the keel had to be replaced, then it's so he had that. He doesn't even call it repair anymore. I think he just calls it, he's rebuilding it. I'm going to color some of the deck here in, because I want this rigging here to pass over, be in front of the deck. And so I don't want to I don't want to draw them in yet. Here's something I don't know. I wonder how they clean the barnacles off these ships. On modern ships, they got divers that just go down, and they got these big air-operated scrubbers, and they clean the barnacles off. I think even little boats, divers will come around, and clean your hull for you. You about got to do it, because especially on these wooden ships, those barnacles will really slow you down. And then you got the problem on the wooden ships, as you'll get a kind of worm that gets into the wood. I had dry docks and stuff back then. But I wouldn't think you'd want to bring your ship in every time. Put it in dry dock every time you want to clean the hull. Now, since I've already colored in this deck a little, when I put these this rigging in, it'll push them to the front. I was in the Navy for a long time, and I was actually stationed on a ship that was about this size for a while. It was a minesweeper. That's when that was when the scales fell away from my eyes, and I got somewhat less romantic about the sea. As I had, when I was a kid, or a young adult, don't know where it started, but I'd read the books about. Well, I read this book called Tinkerbell. This fella had like a 14-foot boat or something, rigged it up as a sailing boat, and sailed it across the Atlantic. Well, I was just sure that's what I wanted to do, something like that, maybe a bigger boat, but you know, just sounded kind of cool. Well, when I got on that minesweeper, it was my first ship, and I learned real quick that the ocean is a big place, and it's not flat like this water is. There are giant swells, especially if you're on a real big ship. You know, it's not too bad, I guess. And I was on a couple of big ships, but if you're on a small boat, you know, my minesweeper was like 200 feet, but it was still tiny compared to that ocean. And when you're standing on the bridge and you're looking up at the waves, you know, things were falling off the walls and then hitting the other wall. And I looked around the bridge, and no one seemed to be concerned about it. So I guess I wasn't going to be concerned. I think these big sailing ships, they were a little bit more stable because you know, they'll tack over to one side or the other, and it kind of keep the ship from rocking a little bit, but it still rocks. It still pitches. Pitches when you're like this, you know, into the waves and up and down like this. You're on feels like you're on a roller coaster. If you've ever been seasick, luckily I have been seasick, but didn't have it real bad. But you don't. It can be so bad when you're seasick, you don't care if you live or die. These things had big old cotton sails. They'd get dirty and brown looking. So we'll shade the sails in a little with some light brown. Well, that does it for another Memphis drawing. Today our drawing prompt was star constellation, but we cheated and we drew the 1797 USS Constellation. See what tomorrow's prompt is. Tomorrow's prompt is a nightmare, so that ought to be interesting. Hope to see you then.